Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Township Mapleton Council meeting on Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And if you can, if you're able, please stand for O Canada. Standing there looking out the window, and not that many weeks ago, it was bright outside at this time of night. Days are getting shorter, the weather's getting colder, and the crops are coming off the fields. It's winter very shortly. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Mr. Martin?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a pecuniary interest on
10-2.
10.2, thank you, regarding bylaw 2023-055. The property in question is across the road from my house.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Any other declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, thank you. Confirmation of minutes. Item 4.1, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that the minutes of the Township of Mapleton Council meeting held on September 26, 2023 be concerned as circulated in the agenda. Any questions or comments on those? All in favor? It's carried. We have no matters arising from the minutes and no matters under the Planning Act. Moves us on to item number 7.1. We do have a delegation here. Dwayne Martin from Apex Building and Contracting. Dwayne, please take the podium.
Red button. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As mentioned, my name is Dwayne Martin from Apex Building and Contracting, here on behalf of Dan Fry, who is the owner and operator of AWF Farm Drainage. And registered a delegation, not because I plan to bring a whole lot of new information, but merely to speak to the application that we have in, which as noted in your minutes there is ZBA 2023-07, which is for 7226 Blind Line. And we were here in the spring, as you'll remember, requesting a zone amendment extension to ultimately a lot line adjustment and site plan approval for hopefully ultimately an expansion to the maintenance shop for his farm drainage business that it's existing and currently operating out of that property. So the only real thing that I wanted to add to it was just to provide some context of where our original report came from and where this revised memo that we would have submitted to planning, which would have been, I'm assuming, distributed as part of your agenda here. So going back in time a little bit, originally I reached out to planning department, asked them about the application, talked about the trees and the fact that we got to cut down trees in order to make this application go through. And so Linda Edmonds' recommendation was to go to county first for a lot line adjustment, get that sort of approved in principle, and come back here for this zoning amendment. So we did that, submitted the application to the County of Wellington. The recommendation came back that they wanted us to cut back in the size of the lot line adjustment that we were proposing, which we did and resubmitted, and they semi-approved it in principle, and that the lot line adjustment, so to speak, on its own was acceptable, except that there was still the matter of the trees, which they deferred back to Mapleton on then. The one thing the County of Wellington had asked us to do is put together an environmental impact study. And so what they requested was for us to put together an environmental impact study assessing whether or not us cutting down this acre of trees was going to negatively affect the woodlot as a whole. From the county perspective, that entire woodlot is noted as greenlands. And so that woodlot is set on 20-30 acres. It extends beyond the rail trail to the other side yet. And so that's what that original report was done up. The ecologist that we would have hired to put together that report was looking at the entire woodlot. And so that was what was presented to the county. And there was no real, so from an entire woodlot perspective, our ecologist felt that we could cut down that acre of trees. It wasn't going to negatively affect the entire woodlot. We didn't necessarily address the actual trees at that point. But then when it started coming back in Mapleton direction, then the recommendation from Linda Redmond was to put together a tree compensation plan, which we did based off of the Tree Preservation Act and the Forestry Act. So there's a certain diameter of trees that's regulated under that. They're not regulated, so we didn't address the non-regulated trees, just the regulated trees. And so that created a disparity in numbers because the trees that were counted in that original impact study that you would have looked at was every seedling from small to large. So what we did this time, because it's specifically addressed to Township of Mapleton, and so last step back one more step, I guess. The last time we were here, there were several things that came out of that discussion item. One was the number of trees, and the other was the usage of the road during half load season. And so we're aware that we can't use the load, that we are limited to 5 tons per axle during half load season. And the operator is aware of that and acknowledges that that's the case, been that way for a while, and he's okay with that and still would like to proceed if possible. And so we put together a cover letter that I'd submitted stating that, and then we put together a memo, and instead of addressing the tree count, we looked at the size, physical square meters of trees that we're cutting down, and looked at any areas, had our ecologist back to look at that woodlot and sort of addressed areas within the woodlot where we could plant more trees to compensate for the trees we're cutting down, and including in a new area that we added to that. So we've taken a little bit of different approach to that, but from a square footage perspective, we feel that we can replace that square footage in other areas of the tree canopy and extend that tree canopy over to the existing farm lane. And that was part of that memo. So I don't have anything else to add to that. I just thought I would sort of provide that context from our perspective. And I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Questions to the delegation from members of council? So the original, if I remember correctly, the original plan was to replace with maple trees. It's already a maple lot anyway. I think you were going to replace the maple trees, and I think the number was a very small number of trees you're going to put in originally, somewhere around 24 maybe. How many trees do you suppose to be, or in this plan, going to be putting in?
So in this case, we didn't address the number of trees specifically because we wanted to see if in principle, the principle of addressing the square footage is something that would be acceptable from the council's perspective. And then my assumption at that point was that we would be working with township planning staff to actually create a number of trees and species and create a plan of, okay, this tree goes there and that tree goes there. Didn't feel like that it was obviously that tree plan would be very specific to that actual application. And if this wasn't going to go any further than this, then I didn't feel like I wanted to put the time and energy into putting that together. That being said, we're prepared to replace the trees that are there in similar quantities. And so similar species, there is actually no coniferous trees in that tree canopy, and our ecologist is suggesting that we should add some to diversify it a little bit. But it is primarily a sugar bush, and so there would be some sugar maple replacements and a variety of whatever between the ecologist and township planning staff that we would come to some sort of agreement on what that looks like.
Right, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. Item 7.1, resolution here by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information and delegation of Dwayne Martin of Apex Building and Contracting, applicant for zoning amendment ZBA 2023-07 regarding background information and status update 27226 Blind Line. All in favor? Carried. We have no minutes from committees. To item 9.11. It's moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that Township Mapleton Council receive information Building Department Report BD 2023-10 dated October 10, 2023 regarding September month end and year to date. Questions, comments on this report? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. 9.2, under the Planning Department. Moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin. That Township Mapleton Council receive for information planning report regarding rezoning of 6385 Yatton Side Road, including a request to remove the industrial use. Questions, comments from council? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. Moving on to item 9.2.2. Moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township Mapleton Council received for information plan report rezoning ZBA 2023-07 Frey Martin. And that council furnish planning staff with their preferred direction related to the proponent's proposed use and associated issues. So we need to give some planning, the planning department some direction. This one, Linda, you like to speak to this? Do you have any comments for this one?
Through you, Mayor. I have no comments at this point. I would like to offer some clarification with respect to the next steps, depending on the direction council goes with this one.
Okay. Council? We need to advise staff of our position to this proposed associated issues. Councillor Tamlin?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. According to the report here, that it said, I think it was Mapleton staff or Wellington staff went to the property or looked at the compensation that was suggested, and were staff seemed happy with what was being suggested. Like, was there staff present, or it was just a report from the ecologist saying what was recommended? Sorry, some clarification. Oh, sorry.
Through you, Mayor. No, staff has not attended the site or provided comments on the report from the ecologist. That's just the ecologist's report and their recommendation of compensation planting. That's it.
You have a follow-up to that, or you? Councillor Tamlin, go ahead.
Yeah. It said that the what was recommended was, like Dwayne was alluding to, was the kind of replacement to the same number or a greater number of species that were being removed. There were a few recommendations of where those plantings would take place. And is it an understanding that plantings will take place within those three suggested areas? Like, I know there was like some,
Councilor Tamlin, Mr. Martin was here as a delegation.
Oh, sorry.
So at this point in time, he cannot actually answer your
Sorry.
question
Oh,
to
sorry,
that. You should have asked that question at the delegation
Okay.
part.
sorry,
But maybe Linda can answer that question for you.
Okay. thanks, sorry.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So the ecologist report in a nutshell is recommending an area of planting, not doesn't give a species list, doesn't give a size, a diameter, like width of the roots or anything like that. It just says this area of trees are going to be removed. An area of this size is going to be removed. We are proposing to replant an area scattered throughout the existing bush, adjacent bush, an area that is equivalent to what's being removed. So we don't know at this point what the species are, what the size of them are, any of that stuff. Dwayne had mentioned that they would work with staff further to come up with that list and what have you, those particulars. That's what's recommended in the report from the ecologist.
Thank you. Further questions? Or comments? Councillor Ottens?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm satisfied with a 1-for-1 replacement, and I appreciate the diversity because that's important in forests now, and adding some evergreens seems like a good idea. So I'm satisfied with that level of that report.
Okay, thank you. So we need to give the direction, council, of our preferred direction to the proposed use and associate uses. Any comments on that? Councillor Martin,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
you're on.
Maybe a process related question first. When this application last came before us, we had defeated the resolution. Can somebody just speak maybe to how this application is now back in front of us? I thought that was the direction we had given, was to decline the application, but maybe it was a little more specific than that.
I'll let the clerk answer that.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, on the 23rd of May, council amended the original motion, and it was a motion to amend the motion under consideration, and staff was directed to investigate an alternative or increased compensation for the loss of tree canopy, and that the applicant may bring back the integrated ecosystem solution report with an addendum and recommendation / solution in consultation with planning staff and the applicant.
So that's what council passed last time. Go ahead, Mr. Martin.
Okay, thank you. It's just in the report. It wasn't that clear, I guess. So I guess as far as the basis of this application goes at the moment, I'm still struggling with it, honestly, just because of the location. The fact that it's a heavy equipment business. The road simply just isn't suitable for that. It runs for those 2 months for the 5-ton per axle. The highlighted section in the Apex report, even has even though they're an ag-related business, so it kind of suggests even some reluctance around that. I might be reading into it too much, but for me, I'm still struggling with the fact that it's a suitable spot for this type of business, especially when you consider the type of tree removal that will be required. Yes, there's a compensation package that's being proposed alongside of it, but my struggle is, and it's not a direct reflection of this applicant, but a lot of times, or sometimes I should say, not a lot of times, sometimes once this type of application gets approved, we kind of lose the enforceability of the traffic on that road, or, it's got to be a real pain in the butt to be storing your equipment off site during those two types of months. And I just worry that in the long run, compliance might be an issue as far as traffic on that roadway goes. And just in the overall context of the application and the specific site and the trees that are involved, I'm still struggling with it, and I don't see myself supporting it, to be honest.
Maybe Mr. Barron can speak a little bit to to that issue about the roads and the enforcement.
So thank you. So much like agreements and bylaws, an agreement is it's only as good as what you can enforce. So we'd have to come up with a mechanism to monitor the traffic if council approves. And I don't have that answer right off the top of my head just now. We'd have to talk with Jamie and probably the roads crew giving us updates on the road if indeed the agreement, again, no reflection of the applicant here, but if the agreement wasn't followed, there would have to be some kind of repercussions, and we'd have to come back with that, right?
Sorry, and just as a follow-up for clarity, there's no exemptions for ag-related businesses around the weight restrictions, correct?
Anything else for council at this point? So I guess council, we have to look at this two things here. One, Councilor Martin has alluded that he's not really supportive of this, so we have to look at whether we want to support this application. And two, Linda has indicated that in this report that we need to give some direction as to what we'd like to see. And Linda would help us out there with what we can do within the Planning Act. I know Councillor Ottens had opened up and said she's supportive of it now with the tree canopy. Yep. Again, that's something that Linda can help us with. Councillor, yeah.
I like that when they've come back with a plan for trees, but the thing that still bothers me is location. With the type of road it is. And I'm not saying this to this applicant at all, but just that type of road. Following that, I don't know, I just worry that it's gonna be very hard to stick to those guidelines for that type of business in that location.
So I'm going to, well, we can't get any further on this unless we know if we're actually going to process it through before we actually get to the recommendations. So we're having issues, Councillor Martin and Councillor Reed have both indicated issues with the road, being that it's a winter maintenance road or no maintenance during the winter time, and the enforcement side of those things. So they've indicated some objections to this application. I'm going to turn on this side here, and am I hearing the same thing from this side, or is this side not picking sides here? But are we down the same line, or are we looking towards okay with it, as long as the tree canopy is taken care of? So I'd like to hear from both of you.
Did you say it's a no winter maintenance? That
Well,
can't be.
No, it's a load
A
restriction.
load
Sorry,
restriction.
load restriction
Yeah,
road.
that's two very different things. Yeah, okay. Trying to think. The applicant wants to build up the road to proper standards, then that's okay. Yeah, that part of it is problematic. So all the tree canopy building is irrelevant if they can't build the business, right? So they're currently not engaging in this level of business right now, or they are.
Linda, you have an answer to that?
I don't know. Maybe the delegation could elaborate.
Then I'll get Dwayne to answer that question then for the delegation that was here, and I'll just let you speak to that question. A specific question about, what are they engaged in currently and what the future engagement is.
So specifically answering that question, the current amount of equipment that they have and what's being proposed, it's the same thing. So they already own all the equipment that they're proposing to move here. They just can't physically store it at this site right now. So when you talk about, are they engaging in this level of activity? There is this much equipment moving in and out throughout the year. Obviously not in those 2 months. And it's been something they've worked around in the past 40 some years that they've been there. They haven't always had this much equipment, obviously, but currently they're not really proposing an expansion to the business. They're just facilities currently don't accommodate what they actually currently have. And so what they're looking to do is trying to increase their efficiency in the maintenance season in order to get back into the fields in the summer. Does that answer that question specifically?
Thank you. So Tamlin?
Yeah, I mean, the issue of weight restrictions and when the use of the road, I think has been addressed. I think that was the question of the enforcement of that, but it's as far as the tree canopy question, that the original study showed kind of not much kind of ecological integrity of that part of the forest as well compared to what was already existing. So I think the compensation plan, in my eyes, it would be adequate because of the diversity that we've been adding to the forest and the density. Yeah.
Thank you. So we're kind of stuck in the middle here. Got the trees, but we do have that road issue. Road issue could be addressed through, I'm going to ask Linda, can we address anything in the application regarding use? I guess we're restricting the road. That's not planning, but it was trying to put something in here about the use of the road in restricted time. But as Mr. Barron pointed out about compensation, if they were to use the road and damage the road during that period of time. I think that's what we're hearing here is like, that's one of the issues we have is using that road during that period of time where we're not supposed to use it. And if they damage that road, the township's on the hook to replace or repair that road. So how do we go about making sure that the township is covered with that?
Through your worship, there are some instances where obviously, we threw around rebuilding of the road, which is it's not feasible for anybody, including the township. But there are some instances where we can enter an agreement and the applicant could put a deposit down. It doesn't have to be a big deposit, whatever we decide, $10,000, $20,000 to keep in case there is damage to the road. And if there is, then we use some of that deposit to fix it. And we've done that in the past. And that could be that could be a way to get this moving forward as well through the agreement. Of course, we'd have to monitor the road, but at least there's something on a line that helps both the township and the applicant without going too far down the money pit.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Councilor Ottens.
So I guess if the intent is to expand the business, is it realistic for the applicant? You say I've been doing it for 40 years within these parameters, the restrictions, but if the intent is to expand the business, then obviously you want to expand the use of the road. Else, what's the point of expanding the business? So is it realistic to expect you to not use that road for 2 months out of 12 when you're planning to expand the business? Like, is that a realistic request and a realistic expectation on your part?
I think what Mr. Martin had said, they're not planning to expand the business. They're just needing more space for the current
For the current.
equipment they have, which they don't have space for.
Okay.
So I think I think if I remember from last time, some of the equipment's already off site because they don't have space for it on their current site. So they're looking for putting it all in one place. And if during those 2 months they need to put it somewhere else, they would probably put it somewhere else during those 2 months of the equipment they need to put somewhere else. For those two months of load restrictions.
Can I ask a
ahead.
different? And so what is our policy on all of our other roads during those 2 months? Is there any sort of enforcement, observation? If someone's caught, what's the punishment, as it were? What do we do in the rest of the township?
For half load, there hasn't been any exceptions whatsoever. Even folks building homes, they're just not allowed. Enforcement, we've really never faced anything with enforcement. But if there is something damage to the road or somebody is doing something, I can assure you we hear about it right away from either the neighbors or people that know that it shouldn't happen. So yeah. There is no exceptions normally.
Anything further then? So we need direction, council, and direction moving this forward. Either we're going to move it forward or we're not going to move it forward. Refer to clerk here a minute. So for those that are in favor of moving this forward, can we get some direction for staff then on the proposed use and associated uses that we could add in here? And then we'll put that to a vote at that point. And those that maybe are on the fence, if they want to add something to the bottom line here, then we can put it to a vote. Right now, we don't have anything to put to a vote. We need to have that proposed use and associated uses. So do you have anything from council for this? Linda, can you add anything at this point, or do you still need us to come up with something for you? Can you give some ideas to council?
Just to reiterate kind of what I've said in my report, Jamie and I did sit down with Dwayne, and we talked about the fact that they would be required to enter into to provide a letter of acknowledgement, an understanding that they are not to use that road during those 2 months. So they're aware. I guess we could talk about perhaps having some kind of agreement in place that had a little more teeth, perhaps. And I just want to add, with respect to the tree plan, before any decision is made here, for process purposes, this application went to Land Division first for lot line adjustment. It was deferred to allow the applicants to come back to the township and go through this process to ensure that the tree measures and whatever other things needed to happen could happen before they granted the lot line adjustment. The report, the tree saving report and the tree inventory report was a requirement at Land Division as part of the consent application, because the lands they are taking are designated and zoned natural environment. So as part of that process, they are required to demonstrate that there is no negative impact on the existing forest. And that's the reason for this report. We would have also required it at our level for the rezoning as well, but that was the first application. So that's why it went through that process first. The reason I'm telling you that is because it will have to go back to Land Division to finish the lot line adjustment should council support this application. And they will also review that report, the tree report, and they may have additional requirements that they might impose as part of the lot line adjustment. I just want to make council aware of that, as well as the applicant, so they understand that there's another kick at the cat at that level as well. So there could be additional requirements that they might want out of this report. Having said that, The issue with this is if the zone amendment is approved before the lot line adjustment, there's nothing to require the tree planting that's being recommended. There's no enforcement behind it. So it would be my recommendation that when that we send to the county that we are now satisfied with the application, should council approve it. We are satisfied, and that we remove our deferral of it and for the lot line adjustment, and that we impose a condition of the tree planting as part of the consent, which would then give us an opportunity to ensure that those trees that whole situation gets dealt with prior to the lot line adjustment being completed. That gives them 2 years to take care of it. The zoning will be in place. The lot line adjustment cannot proceed until the tree planting and compensation planting is done. So I just wanted to lay that out there for council so that, and also for the applicant, that they understand that there's still more to this that could come up. And that would be my recommendation to ensure that the tree compensation is taken care of accordingly.
I had written all that down that you just said. You didn't write it all down, did you? No, didn't think so. Anybody record that? You got that record over there? You got playback? So again, your wording on that, you said satisfied with the application, removal of the referral.
Well, if I may, if this is approved, I will have to come back with a bylaw for approval, final approval. So I'll put that in my follow-up report with that recommendation back to county council or county land division for the added condition. Is that
Good.
helpful? Okay.
Yes. Councilor Martin.
Thank you. So while I'm not in support of this application, I also, if council were to approve it, I don't think I would agree with putting a deposit down on the road either. For me, that would kind of signal that, we're directing it at the applicant, that we, don't trust the agreement in place. So to have a deposit down on the road, I think I wouldn't support that either. I think council would need to bear the responsibility of approving a heavy equipment business in this particular location, knowing what we know about the road, right? So I think council needs to take that responsibility on if we choose to approve it and not look to the applicant for a deposit on the roadway.
Okay. I still think that anybody that damaged the road needs to be held accountable, knowing that because they know they shouldn't be using it at that point in time. And I think that's what we're going to when you were talking about, you and Jamie had talked about putting that in agreement in place for that, which would give you a little bit of teeth to go back to the owner of that property at that point. So you don't have to put that money down. Not necessary. But then at least with the agreement, you have something to go back to and say, look, you agreed to do this. And now here's the damage to the road. And I think that's important that we as a township should be able to go back to those people that have had agreements, written agreements with us to abide by those agreements.
In fairness, then I would agree with you. I think if we're sending a message to the township, we don't put a business with this proposed use in this location because we know it's a half load road. So I think that's a message to send. On the compensation piece, yeah, I mean, I agree with you too. I just think we're all adults here too, right? And
The other part, sorry, through you, Mayor, the other part was the haul route being near a residential area and that they were going to avoid that. Is that something we're planning on putting in the same agreement, for lack of a better word?
Linda?
Through you, Mayor, again, that's something that the Director of Public Works will address, but I understand in our meeting, he did mention that to the applicant that he'd like to see that.
The recommendation right now, resolution is that Township Mapleton Council receive information plan report, rezoning, Frey and Martin. And it does say that council furnished planning staff with preferred direction related to proponents' proposed use and associated uses. So that bottom piece, that second piece there, we could have in there that staff come back in the bylaw with recommended direction in the bylaws. That's what you were talking about before, recommended. No. Clarify for me. Go ahead.
The more I think about this, the more I realize it's too problematic, because now you're saying you can't go through the residential area. So now you're going even further the other way down an unassuming, what do you call it, the half load road. With all the heavy equipment, it just seems like between the trees, between the residential, between the heavy equipment, between the road not being used too much, it's too much. It's just, I'm probably not going to support it, so I'm not sure how that carries out then.
Well, no, right now we're in a discussion here. So council, then I could always, with council's direction, I could read it exactly the way it is and council could defeat it. And I'm getting that, that's the direction council is going to go. Defeat this, now that we're having this discussion. Without any changes for preferred direction. So I'm just going to read it the way it is. You read it already. I'm just going to call it out the way it is and then leave it at that. Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of this application? And opposed? Okay, and that is defeated. Thank you. So moving on to 10.1. Moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that bylaw number 2023-054 being a bylaw to amend bylaw. Wait a minute, where am I going here? My apologies. Let me get back to the agenda. That's right? Okay, sorry. That resolution, Martin Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that bylaw number 2023-054 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2010-080 being a bylaw, zoning bylaw for the Township of Mapleton, be hereby read a first, second, and third, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed with a corporate seal. Questions, comments? All in favor? It's carried. This is item number 10.2, which Councillor Martin has pecuniary interest. Moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that bylaw number 2023-055 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2010-080, being a bylaw for the Township of Mapleton, be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with a corporate seal. Any further direction, comments? All in favor? It's carried. All right, everyone. Now we're back. I understand where you're coming, Mr. Clerk. 10.2, no, there's the bylaw 10.2 is recommendation in the bylaws is separated here, and that's what the clerk was reminding me of. That bylaws numbered 2023-054 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2010-080 being a bylaw for the zoning township of Mapleton is separate than the other bylaw. So the clerk is just clarifying whether we had put the two together. Is wondering if we want to separate those two out because they're two separate things when it comes to this property. And he wants to know if council wants to separate it out for the vote instead of including it all in one.
Just
Go ahead.
correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, but your bylaw, the bylaw 2023-054 is for 6385 Gatton Side Road in Wallenstein. And it's with regard to the previous item that the planning department has brought with accommodating horses. There was an industrial area. The planning department has really resolved those issues. And that is not, that's from a previous meeting. And it's very likely that council wants to pass that bylaw tonight. There's no report on it. Yeah.
So it is, we had just, the one we passed council was 2023-055. So it's a 2023-054 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2010-080 being a zoning bylaw for the township of Mapleton. That's the one the clerk's referring to. It's, I'll need a mover and a seconder if that's the clerk's direction. Unless we want to use the same mover and a seconder, Mr. Clerk. So the
Mr.
mover-
Mayor, if I might,
Yeah.
did we not pass that under 10.1?
Mr. Clerk.
I'm, if that was your intention, then.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just wanted to make sure that we did it
Okay, just so.
separately.
So copy that.
Yeah, because, yeah, Side Road was in there, I wanted to make sure you're clear that there's no report on this one. It's just-
Just the bylaw.
Yeah, he just wants to make sure that we know that it is separated. Thank you. Thank you for helping there. All right. Number 11, correspondence to council direction. We don't have any. Correspondence for council information. We have something there from Grand River Conservation Authority. Number 13, notice of motion. Other business, number 15. Council Martin.
This is another procedural question for you or the clerk. I'm not sure. I just want to make sure we captured council's intent under the planning report 9.22. And that we're not going to have another situation like the cemetery in Wyandotte where we thought we had declined it and then it was just declined receiving it for information. And then 2 months later, it comes back again. Do we need to pass something more specific by way of another motion that the applicant knows that this application is declined versus we're declining it to receive it for information and declining to provide direction?
Thank you. Through. I'll just clarify with the planning department, but I believe that what's happened tonight is the zoning application has been declined. On 9.22.
So Mr. Clerk, if we run into this situation before, and then Mr. Martin, you're exactly right. The application there was to receive information and then provide direction to staff. So what we denied was that receiving for information. So Linda, we obviously don't want this coming back again. Please give us direction.
I think it would be helpful if it was clearly stated, like a motion was put on the table indicating whether you are defeating it or declining the application or not, and also a reason. Because when you decline an application, you're obligated to give a reason in the decision.
Thank you for bringing that forward again. We don't want to run in that situation once again. So we need to put forward a motion. Someone can put a motion on the table. Councillor Martin, moving a motion for application or zoning. Which one was it? Sorry,
Would you like me to?
go ahead, Mr. Clerk. The clerk is going to write the motion, but you're going to put the motion on the floor. And who's going to second that? Councillor Reed's going to second that. Thank you. And this is so that zoning application ZBA 2023-07 that council is denying the application completely. And the reason. And so we'll need a reason, council. Council Reed?
I think it was a consensus that it was not the right location for that type of business with that type of space and road.
Okay. Scale of business in the location with that type of road.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, please feel free to correct this if I'm wrong. That Township of Mapleton Council decline zoning application ZBA 2023-07 for the following reason: road restrictions and the scale of business.
Does that work for council? Okay, so then Councillor Martin and Councillor Reed, you're good with the moving and seconding still? Okay, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed. Any questions or comments at this point in time? We're going to actually vote on that right now. All in favor? Okay, it's carried. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward, Mr. Martin. So number 15, other business. We have no closed sessions. I'll go right on number 17 then. Item number 17.1, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamman, that bylaw number 2023-056, being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of the council of the corporation of Township of Mapleton be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with a corporate seal. All in favor? That's carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
7:53.